We've built this platform from the ground up with scale in mind. This platform combines SIM and the core capabilities of log collection, data management, search, reporting, dashboarding, along with powerful security analytics for automated threat detection, investigation, and response workflows. So today I'm going to walk you through all of these great new features and functionalities that we just released and how this is helping organizations reduce that SIM effectiveness gap. What we're going to see is I'm logged into the Exabeam security operations platform and I have access to all the different applications. And as I said, we built this from the ground up with a real core focus on the platform and the plumbing and making sure that it's easy to get data into Exabeam, be able to normalize it, enrich it, and then be able to leverage that normalized and enriched log data into various applications related to TDIR. So we built a brand new collector management application to manage the cloud collectors, the site collectors, and context collectors. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today. We're going to jump into, if I've already collected data, I have my collectors deployed, I now want to make sure that I'm able to see that data. I'm parsing it, I'm enriching it, and that it's going to be useful for my downstream applications. And so we built a brand new application called Logstream. And as Jeannie had mentioned, Logstream is our application that sits on top of our new unified ingestion pipeline, a single place to ingest all log and context data at scale. We certified this for a sustained million EPS per tenant. And within Logstream here, what I'm able to see is and understand is how are my parsers performing and what data that I'm ingesting is being parsed. And so right away, I can see how many parsers are actually enabled and the health of those parsers. So I can see that right now I have 173 parsers parsing all of the different data feeds that are coming in out of the 8,500 that we have out of the box default parsers. I can see none of them are in an error or idle state. I can then take a look at the parser health over time, where I can see that in some cases, parsers fire on data that comes in real time. I don't always have the same logs being generated every single second. And so my parsers may kind of increase and decrease just a little bit over time as I have logs streaming in. But I can clearly see that I'm fairly consistently, in the 150 or above parsers over the last 24 hours. And again, no errors or idle parsers that I need to address right away. And then I see my most active vendors. So again, this is a good visualization of understanding out of all the data that's coming into the platform, which ones are parsing and how many logs are being parsed from each one of these vendors. And is this what I'm expecting to see? If I just onboarded my checkpoint logs, then it's great. I can now see that a lot of those logs are being parsed, and this is my #1 vendor at the moment. If we scroll down, we can start to see all of the parsers that are active in the pipeline. I can see the parser name, the vendor and the product of these parsers. I can see the events that are built post Exabeam's normalization as part of our common information model. I can see the volume of logs matching these parsers, the status, the health, and when they were last updated. I also can reorder the parsers here. So we have something called parser precedence, and this makes sure that I can actually ensure that the right default parser is matching the right logs and format that I'm bringing in. I could import parsers. I can also create brand new parsers using our auto parser generator, which has now been built into the Logstream application. And I can search. So let's say I want to take a look at some of these checkpoint parsers. I can search this and I see I have 2 parsers here. And I can do various things. I can view details, which we're going to do in just a moment. I could customize this if I wanted to extract more fields or change field extractions. I could duplicate this parser, disable it, or launch Livetail. I'm going to talk about Livetail in just a second. I have it open in my next tab. But first, let's view the details of these parsers. So when I open up the detail for any parser, I see the new naming convention that we've developed for our parsers. So we've built a brand new common information model to help us normalize all of the data that's being ingested into the platform. It's a common information model that we actually open sourced with our XDR Alliance partners at Black Hat this year. But I can see my naming convention is the vendor, the product, the format of the logs, and the output event type. We've also introduced parser versioning here, so I can clearly see, am I on the latest version or the changes in the versions? And any changes to these parsers are audited, and I can see these in the activity log. I can see the actual configuration of the parser and the event builder configuration files. And I can even see an extraction preview, which is showing me an actual sample of my checkpoint logs and the extractions themselves and the value of those extractions based on that parser configuration. And again, if I wanted to customize this, I could click customize, and this is going to bring me into my auto parser generator workflow, where I can actually scroll down to the bottom and I can start to look at these tokenized fields and continue to extract more and more fields. So we really want to make sure that we provide the right end-to-end experience, that it's seamless. So So when you're looking at a parser and need to make changes, we can guide you to that next step to be able to extract more fields, validate those fields, and get these new extractions into the pipeline in a matter of minutes. Now, as I mentioned, not only do we have Logstream here, but we have an application called LiveTail. And LiveTail will actually show you a live look into the pipeline. So if I had just ingested those checkpoint alerts, let's say I configured my firewalls to syslog that data to our on-prem site collector, I can then in real time see and validate that those checkpoint logs are making it into the ingestion pipeline and into the Exabeam platform. And I paused this for a moment, but I can replay this. I can look at, the parsed logs. I could look for events that are not being parsed where I may need to create a new parser. But I can click on these, and again, I can see all of the sample of the event and how many of the fields are actually being parsed, and how many of our core detection and informational fields defined by the common information model are available in this log. So we've gone to very detailed length to try to prescribe and help customers understand what are the most relevant fields in a security log for TDIR workflows. And so in some cases, you may not have the right levels of auditing turned on. And so we want to help prescribe what fields are super important for detection and are going to drive our prepackaged content. We have over 1,900 rules between our correlation engine and analytics. We want to make sure that customers have as many of those fields that we leverage as possible being parsed out of their events. So this is Logstream. This is an application that I'm really excited about because it really helps organizations streamline the data onboarding and make sure that that data is set up for success and be able to be leveraged by the downstream applications. Now, once I have data coming in and it's been normalized and it's been enriched as well with our threat intelligence data, I may want to start to search those logs. So I'd like to introduce you to our new search application. We've built this new search application to solve two challenges, both the real-time search on hot data, as well as that long-term historical search needs. Some organizations want to be able to search data for the last 10 years. Previously at Exabeam, we had two products that did this. We had the hot data storage in our data lake, and we had our cloud archive. We've now merged these experiences into one. So within the new search application, I can search the logs from the last 10 minutes or the last 10 years. And you'll notice here, I'll demonstrate how quickly we can get those results back. One of the things that we notice for most organizations, when they log into a search experience for the first time, their first search is a star search because they're not quite sure what data exists for them to actually search and explore. And so because we do normalization and enrichment on ingest, we were able to build a simple point and click search experience. Now we have a more advanced search editor as well, where I can just type in all of the different queries that I want. But you can think of this as almost like shopping on Amazon. We give you various different places to start. And all of the fields available here that I can click on to drive my search are dynamic based on the data that's actually being ingested into your environment. So I could search by the subjects, which are kind of high level objects. Like I could look at my database logs or my email activity in logs or my file. I could start by searching on specific vendors and products or any of the predefined common information model fields. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just click on network. So this is subject network. And I'm going to go ahead and let's just search this over the last 24 hours. So I'm going to run my search. You're going to notice here just in a matter of a couple of seconds, I just got 146 million results returned across all of my network logs. Now I can see here on the left-hand side, I have a summary, a filter summary here. So I can see and I could break down if I wanted to look at specific desk ports, or I can even see the different products here. Again, our common information model has already aligned your Cisco firepower, your ASA, and your checkpoint firewall into this network subject. I can see all of the relevant fields here up at the top. So I can click on this and I can see the full raw log and all of the parsed fields. And I can toggle on these eye icons. And that's going to show what are the most valuable fields for this type of event. And these are all dynamic. So when I'm looking in network logs, Exabeam is going to expose things like the desk IP, desk port, protocols. If I was looking at endpoint logs or process execution, it would show the file path and information that's relevant to those types of events in those logs. Now, I mentioned we can search for 24 hours. We could actually go and we can search a year's worth of data. And if I run this search again, you're going to see that the results return very quickly. So I had 146 million events before. In just a few seconds, I'm going to see a lot more data, 459 million network events. As I'm going through my data, I can again look at these fields and I can toggle on and off and include things into my search. So maybe I want to look at the direction of the traffic. So maybe I want to look at only outbound. So I can say direction is not inbound. And as soon as I do that, my search is updated. I'm just going to go back here to the last 24 hours, and we can continue to run these searches. Now, one of the value adds for Exabeam is our ability to automatically enrich all logs coming into our platform with our threat intelligence information. And if I want to see any logs that have known IOCs related to them, I can simply come into my field summary. Is IOC true? I can add that to my query and again hit search. And now I'll be able to see all of the events that have been ingested that actually are matching against known threat intelligence. And we're going to show you not just that it's a known threat intel hit, whether it's an IP, a domain, we'll even give you the type. So I can see that I have a lot of botnet activity happening right now. The other thing I may want to do is I know that I have my firewalls in place, and a lot of this activity is probably being blocked or denied. So I want to even focus this search a little bit more, and I'm going to come down to the outcome. And I want to make sure that I want to see only where this traffic was successful outbound to a known IOC. And the other great thing here is outcome is a field defined by our common information model once again. So I don't have to know between my different firewalls and network vendors, is it allowed, deny, success, block? I can simply say, was it a success or a failure? So I can see here in the last 24 hours, I have a lot of traffic going outbound through my network devices to known bad sites. Now, I could obviously go ahead and save this search, and this could be a search that I run every morning when I come into the office to check on what are the latest hits to threat intel. But rather than taking that reactive approach, I'd rather be proactive, and I'd like to build a correlation rule. So what I can do is I can click convert to rule. This is going to open up our brand new correlation building experience. And we built this with a close tie-in to that search experience. So I can automatically, from when I'm searching or threat hunting, if I find something that I want to be detected on next time, I can click that build correlation rule, and it brings me into my building experience. So I have my search already predefined here. Had I not started from the search interface and drove right into creating a correlation rule, we also have a test button. So if I wasn't sure if this query was successful or the data matched, I can test it from here as well. My next step now is to add additional conditions. So I set up my search to filter on the data that I care about, and then I can add new conditions. So if I wanted to build a port scan rule, I can do counting and aggregation. But in this case, I'm just looking at matches to known IOCs, so I'm going to trigger anytime this event matches my search. Next thing I can do is set the outcome. Right? This is one of my favorite things about this new correlation experience is that you don't always want to treat the outcome of a correlation rule the same. In some cases, you have correlation rules like if Mimikatz is running on your domain controller, you may want to send an email and create a case and wake somebody up in the middle of the night to handle that right away. In other events like this one, it's just an IOC hit. I may not want to have somebody respond to all of these all of the time. What I can do is click generate alert. What this will do is this will trigger a new alert that Exabeam will create. It's going to flow into our behavior-based analytics. I'll show you where it's going to show up in user and entity timelines. It's going to add risk. And it's also going to flow into our alert triage product, which is where analysts can start to triage all of the third-party alerts and Exabeam correlation rules. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to call this IOC hit. I'm going to give it the same name for the rule. I'm going to categorize this as an external malware threat. I'm going to give it a low priority, and I can enable this rule and hit save. So now I've just built a brand new correlation rule. So I was starting my search experience or threat hunting. I can quickly pivot into building rules. So here I can see all of the rules that are in my correlation experience that I've created. I can see whether they're enabled. I can see the severity set, the use case, when they were last modified, created, and who created them. Now, not only can I go and create hundreds of correlation rules, but Exabeam is now delivering correlation rules prepackaged for our customers. We have over 100 correlation rules at launch covering all of our Exabeam use cases. So it's a great place to get started, to learn how to build correlation rules, and to also be able to enable a bunch of these for those standard SIM use cases. We're able to now also deliver this content directly to our customers via the cloud. So this really enhances our ability to deliver new content when things like Log4j or emerging threats are happening. We're able to get our content to our customers in a matter of minutes. So I have my data coming in, I'm able to search it, I've built my correlation rules. Now I may want to visualize my logs as well. So we built a brand new platform level dashboarding service. And I can build visualizations and dashboards on all of that log data that I'm collecting from all of my telemetry sources, as well as all of the log data that Exabeam is generating. So all of that audit log data. So I can see here I have various different dashboards that I can create. Exabeam ships prepackaged dashboards like a summary of all of our analytics anomalies or a summary of case management so I can see how my SOC is performing. I have a bunch of different dashboards that I can open up here, like our network IOCs, again, using our own threat intelligence. I can see things like IOC trends over time. We have 12 pre-built chart types that allow you to visualize all of this log data, either to spot new trends, summarize data, or build reports for management. I can see where the IOCs are coming from via this world map. I can see breakdowns of the top destination IPs, domains, source IP addresses. We can build out various different charts around my RDP connections. Maybe I want to summarize if I don't have a lot of RDP traffic via bar charts. We can look at things like summarizing our top MFA logins. With our newest content in our analytics that we just shipped on Monday, we introduced a bunch of new content related to TDIR for public cloud infrastructure. So modeling behavior around AWS, GCP, and Azure, as well as brand new content for MFA bombing. We even have these great Sankey charts as well that really help summarize and visualize data flow across the environment. So we have this great new platform level dashboarding capability. The customers have access to our prepackaged content, but have the ability to create all of their own visualizations, reports, and share those out with the rest of the organization. Now that we've done our onboarding, our collection, our search, our dashboarding, and our correlation rules, now it's time to start to talk about those TDIR workflows. So this really covered that first pillar that Jeannie talked about, this cloud native data lake. Let's now talk about behavior analytics and automating the entire TDIR workflow. And we're going to do this by starting in Exabeam's alert triage application. As I mentioned, this is where Exabeam takes an alert-centric approach to security. You can either start in our alert triage, or you could start in our behavior analytics looking at the highest risk users and devices. But regardless of where you start, we're going to drive you into a common investigation workflow through our case management and our incident responder products. Not only does alert triage summarize and bring all of the third-party and correlation rules into a single pane of glass, but we also have what we call dynamic alert prioritization. This is a machine learning algorithm that we've built on our new cloud-native analytics engine to help reprioritize alerts. So we can either increase the priority of alerts or decrease the priority of alerts. And we're looking at multiple different dimensions every time an alert fires. Like how rare is it for this particular signature or threat type from this vendor? Is it abnormal for the organization to see these alerts or for a specific user? And we all know that there are alerts that we have in our environment that for specific vendors that are almost always high and critical. And after we triage them and investigate, they're false positives. So in Exabeam's case, we can start to lower those priorities. We also know there's oftentimes alerts that get triggered at low or medium priority that we just don't have time to look at. And so Exabeam's trying to bring those alerts up by bringing higher priority and attention to them. I'm going to start by looking at my EDR alerts. I can see here that I have 2 EDR alerts that have been prioritized as high by Exabeam's dynamic alert prioritization. And I'm filtered on my high priority alerts. I could look at all of the EDR alerts that I have from CrowdStrike and Palo Alto. I can see some of them are being lower priority. Some have no change in the priority or status. But I am going to focus on just my high priority alerts here. So I can see high priority from Exabeam. I can see the vendor and the product that generated this alert, where it came from, the severity from that vendor, the threat type, and the threat name. You see, I have 2 alerts here, both for Frederick Weber and a specific device. So Exabeam is automatically going to enrich all of these alerts with the information about the users and the devices. Even if the source alert didn't have a username in it, Exabeam's analytics already knows what host is assigned to what IP and what user is logged into that host. And therefore, even for network alerts that don't have a user, we can attribute and understand who the user was on the device when that alert fired. Now, because I have 2 alerts for the same user, I'm going to start by looking at my medium alert from CrowdStrike. And I can open up my window here. And the goal of alert triage is to be able to give me the information I need to make a quick decision to either resolve, dismiss, or escalate this alert. And ideally, I want to do this in under a minute. So first, I'm going to assign this to myself. If I wanted to, I can see the full raw log from that alert from CrowdStrike. I can see that it looks like it ran out of maybe a temporary directory called barbarian.jar was the file name. I have a link to the CrowdStrike console if I wanted to pivot to investigate there. I have the SHA hash value. And then I get this context about who I'm investigating from an entity perspective. I have a user, Frederick Weber, who's a web developer, and he's got 399 points of risk. Exabeam's default threshold to alert on risky behavior is at 90 points. So he's quite a bit higher than even the basics for alerting. And we can see his device has got 80 points of risk, so it's almost at that 90-point threshold. And we're going to tell you whether or not this device was the source or the destination of this particular piece of malware or this detection. Now, the first thing I often do when I'm triaging alerts is I want to say, well, this CrowdStrike alert fired. What else happened around it? I want to try to figure out, why did this alert fire? Where did it come from? What happened after? And so Exabeam is already going to show me the nearby anomalies. It's going to tell me that it added 40 points of risk in the analytics because the user was on a VPN, that this is the first time this user has ever seen or had a Trojan generic detection. Same with the first time we've ever seen this signature across the organization. It was run out of a temp directory, and it was the first time this user ran this process. So already I have enough information right now that I can say, you know what, I should probably escalate this. I want to spend a little bit more time investigating. So I'm going to go ahead and escalate this into a high case. Now, Exabeam is automatically going to create this case for me in the case manager, gives me a link that I can open up. But before I pivot into the case, I want to take a look at Frederick's timeline. I want to better understand, is this a true positive? And where did this CrowdStrike alert come from? So we've now pivoted from alert triage into Exabeam's advanced analytics. This is our UEBA solution. And I get brought right into Exabeam's smart timelines. These timelines are a summary of all behavior, both normal and abnormal, for Frederick on this given day. And we build these timelines for every single user every single day, regardless if they've done anything abnormal. It's kind of like a DVR of everything any user and device has done in your environment. And by having these pre-built timelines, this is really where we start to talk about automating the investigation. We're putting all of the puzzle pieces together to give that holistic view of what happened. So I can see this user accessed a web domain, this zoomer.cn domain. This is the first time the user's ever accessed an IP address in China. It's a good anomaly. But as an analyst, if I see this anomaly, the first question is going to be, well, if this is the first time, where does he normally browse the web? What geolocations? If I click on China, Exabeam will show me the data model, the histograms that we've built that show me what normal behavior looks like. It's 30% of the time he's accessing IPs in internal locations, Indonesia, Georgia, Saudi Arabia, but never China. Exabeam has over 750 pre-built data models that we build behavior around for every user and every device. You can almost think about this as Exabeam is building essentially millions of unique correlation rules for every user and every device across all of the different behavioral elements. So the user accesses this odd domain. We then see this process barbarian.jar run. It's running for the first time for the user, his peer group Salesforce, and the organization as a whole. And again, if I want to know what process has been run across my entire org, I can click on this data model and see all of the processes we've seen run in the past. Now, luckily, when barbarian.jar ran, CrowdStrike kicked in and generated this security alert where we started our investigation with alert triage. But it looks like maybe it didn't catch everything, because then I see vssysadmin and bcd edit run, and vssysadmin is deleting shadow copies. BCD edit is disabling my recovery mode. I continue to scroll down, and then we see what looks like a classic case of lateral movement. This is exactly what we saw with one of our customers, where we were able to uncover and catch lapses for them. Their employee had unfortunately sold his credentials to Lapsus. They had logged in, and they started to move laterally against the Citrix environment. And we saw hundreds of first accesses and abnormal accesses to devices for that user. So we see lateral movement happen. And then at the very end here, we see that Palo Alto alert. Again, that was the second alert in alert triage. And we see a few more normal behavior, and the user logs out of the VPN. Right? So this has automated a lot of the questions that I would typically have by starting from that CrowdStrike alert. Where did it come from? Likely that Chinese domain. What did it do? Well, I have lateral movement, a lot of other hosts that I likely want to investigate because of that. And hopefully this Palo Alto alert finally cleaned up that malware. Now I have a lot more information where I can start to pivot over into my case manager to finish up the remediation. This is one of the important things I think for a lot of SOCs is a lot of SOCs want to stop playing whack-a-mole with alerts. It's not just about getting a malware alert and re-imaging that machine. We want to make sure that we're solving the real problem, understanding where it's coming from, and being able to stop and prevent users from continuing to get infected. And that's what bringing automation into the full TIR lifecycle allows. So we're in the case. It's automatically been tagged as malware. I have a bunch of fields pre-populated, both about the case as a whole, as well as the malware that was found from CrowdStrike. I have all of the entities that are related to this case, like the file involved, the devices that were accessed, and the users involved. And all of this has been dynamically added in here based on our playbooks. Our turnkey malware playbook is automatically run when a malware case was created. And that's going to detonate these malware files in a sandbox and provide a lot more intelligence around that malware. Auto case enrichment has happened, as well as incident classification, classifying this as malware. I'm a seasoned security analyst, so I know what I should be doing as next steps. But oftentimes I have junior folks on my team. And so Exabeam provides a prescriptive task list of what we think an analyst should do for detection and analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and that post-incident activity. So I can expand this and see some of those tasks that Exabeam believes an analyst should perform, or what questions they should get answers for, like determine the malware details, or review evidence for suspicious outbound network traffic. I can assign these to analysts in my team. I can set due dates or add my own tasks. Now, one of the great things about this case is also dynamic. Remember, we saw lateral movement in that timeline. So I can now add lateral movement as another incident type. And when I do that, it'll automatically add a new section into my case that I may want to fill out more details. And it'll also add new tasks to these task lists. So my analysts can make sure that they, again, are responding to the entire threat. Now, as I mentioned, some of our previous playbooks already ran, and I can see the output of these in our workbench, where I can see each individual action that ran in those playbooks. And every time an action runs and returns results, it returns a card on screen with those results. So here, this is where it added all of those entities to my case automatically for me. I can scroll down and I can see information about the user and the context about who this user is that I'm investigating. I can see things like all of the MITRE TTPs that were found in that timeline and in that session. And so I have now enough information where if I wanted to, I could run more playbooks, maybe my threat intelligence playbook, or I could create a playbook to remediate these types of threats. So I could run another playbook, or I could simply run an action like quarantining a host or blocking a URL. And this allows me to now remediate this threat. When you think about this, this is all about using analytics and automation to be able to go from an alert and alert triage all the way to remediation in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes and fully remediate the entire threat, not just a piece of it. This is really where we're putting machines to work on the analytics and the automation side. One last application I want to show you that's brand new is once you have all of this data coming into the Exabeam platform, you're able to do effective TDIR. How do you know how effective your coverage is and how much value you're getting out of the Exabeam platform? Well, we've built a product called Outcomes Navigator to help answer just those questions. And you're going to see in Outcomes Navigator, we've aligned these outcomes to our 3 categories of use cases: compromised insider, malicious insider, and external threats. And this is going to show organizations how much coverage they have against any one of these use cases based on the data that's being ingested. And we've taken an approach of, we don't call coverage 1 to 100. You're never done in security. You're never 100% covered. We're saying you're at good, better, best. And so I can hover over any of these like lateral movement, and I can see I have good coverage. I can click on to view details. This is going to tell me what lateral movement is. It's going to show me how the scores are calculated. But essentially, I have 15 or 16 different product categories feeding the Exabeam platform out of 56 total that are driving this lateral movement use case. I can scroll down and I can see each one of those different product categories. So I can see I have access management logs from OAuth and Okta. I have a bunch of endpoint auditing logs that are coming in. And Exabeam is going to show me the parser calibration tier. How well is this data being normalized against our common information model? The better it's aligned and normalized, tier 1 is the best, the more outcomes and value I can get. So we're not about telling customers all the time, in order to get better coverage, you just need to constantly be bringing more data in. As Jeannie mentioned at the very beginning, it's about collecting the right data. And so we want customers to collect the right data and make sure they're getting the most value out of that data that's being collected. I can also see below here the amount of coverage and the outcomes that I'm getting from an analytics rules perspective. So for lateral movement, I have 242 available anomaly detections, and I have 1 dashboard related to lateral movement that I can use based on the data that's coming in. Now, if I wanted to get more coverage, I can pivot into the recommendations tab, which again, we're going to show customers. We want to first tell you that if you have logs in here that are not at calibration tier 2 or 3, or 1 or 2, excuse me, you want to look at those logs through Logstream again to make sure that they are parsed and normalized correctly. We're also going to tell you if you did want to increase the parser calibration tier for, let's say, auth 0, these are all of the other use cases that would impact. So again, we want to help customers understand, in some cases, I can just bring in one log source that's going to drive outcomes across the platform versus sticking with one log that's only going to drive one use case. So I can get more value out of that data. We'll also prescribe what additional products that you could actually onboard into Exabeam that are missing today that, again, would enhance that use case coverage. So this is a great new application. This is something that CISOs and SOC managers can use on a quarterly basis by exporting these and sharing these with management and say, you know what, next quarter, we're going to focus on our data leakage use case. And then 3 months from now, they can actually see making sure that the data is coming in correctly or adding new log sources, continue to expand the coverage and capabilities across these use cases. I know that's a lot that we just covered. We've released a ton of new applications on this new cloud native platform that we're super excited about. And I hope you were able to see here how Exabeam's new SOC operations platform really solves those three core components of what organizations need to fight these credential-based attacks and the emerging threats that continue to happen.